The mysterious invitation. Ethan had never believed in aliens, at least not until the message came. It was an ordinary morning when it arrived, hidden among the countless messages he received each day. He was used to junk mail, spam, and endless advertisements. But this one was different. The subject line was simple yet strange. An invitation from Princess Zarnix of Xylara. It was an email like no other. At first, Ethan thought it was a prank. He had no reason to believe that someone from another planet would send him a message. Yet, curiosity gnawed at him. He opened the email, his fingers trembling slightly as he clicked on the link. The message itself was short, but it was unlike anything he had ever read. To the human who dares to read this message, I, Princess Zarnix of the Xylarian Empire, challenge you. Defeat my champion in combat, and you shall win my heart. Fail, and you will leave with nothing but a memory. Your destiny awaits, human. The choice is yours. It felt like a dream, but the words burned into his mind. Defeat my champion, and you shall win my heart. Ethan read the message again. Was it real? How could this be real? The Xylarian Empire, a powerful alien civilization, was nothing more than a legend, a myth from science fiction novels. And yet here it was, an invitation for him to fight and possibly win the heart of an alien princess. Ethan was no stranger to challenges. He had been a fighter his entire life, growing up in the rough neighborhoods of his city. But this was something else entirely. A battle against a champion from another world? The stakes could not be higher. He had heard of the Xylarian champions before. They were warriors unlike any other. Legends told of their strength, their skill, and their ability to defeat enemies with ease. But something about this invitation sparked a fire in Ethan. There was a thrill in the idea of testing himself, of facing an opponent unlike he had ever encountered. And then there was the princess, Princess Zarnix. Her name alone sent chills down his spine. He had heard stories of her beauty and power, but what would she be like in person? What did she mean by win my heart? Was this some kind of game or something deeper? He sat back in his chair, staring at the message, his mind racing. This was the opportunity of a lifetime, a chance to prove himself on a galactic stage. But what if he failed? What if he wasn't strong enough? The champion was said to be unbeatable, and the risks were enormous. A loss could mean more than just embarrassment. It could mean his life. His hand hovered over the keyboard as he considered his options. He had always been a risk-taker, always wanted to chase after the impossible. The thought of walking away was tempting, but deep down he knew he couldn't, not after reading those words, not after feeling the weight of destiny pressing against him. Without a second thought, he typed a response. I accept your challenge, Princess Zarnix. I will defeat your champion, and I will claim what is promised. He hit send, and the message was gone. For a moment, nothing happened. The screen was silent. Ethan leaned back in his chair, his heart pounding in his chest. What had he just done? Had he just signed up for the fight of his life? Minutes passed before a new message appeared in his inbox. It was from the same address, a response from Princess Zarnix herself. Very well, human. Prepare yourself. You will be transported to Xylara in 48 hours. Do not disappoint me. The message ended abruptly, but the excitement and fear filled Ethan's body all at once. 48 hours. He had no idea what to expect, but he knew one thing. This was real, and he was about to embark on a journey that would change his life forever. Ethan looked out his window, the city skyline stretching out before him. He had always dreamed of adventure, of doing something meaningful. This was his chance. But as the excitement grew, so did his doubts. What if the stories of the Xylarian champions were true? What if he wasn't ready? But Ethan knew that the only way to find out is to go. He had accepted the challenge, and now there was no turning back. The fight of his life was about to begin, and he wasn't going to back down.
The arrival on Xylara. 2 days later, Ethan stood in his apartment, bags packed, his mind racing with the weight of what he had committed to. His heart raced with excitement, his thoughts a jumble of anticipation and doubt. He couldn't help but wonder if he had made the right decision. But deep down, he knew this was his chance to prove himself, to step into a story bigger than anything he had ever imagined. Suddenly, the room around him began to shimmer, the air feeling thick and charged with energy. Ethan's eyes widened as the world seemed to bend and warp around him. The familiar walls of his apartment disappeared, replaced by an intense flash of light, blinding him for a moment. He stumbled back, but before he could catch his breath, the light faded, and everything settled. Ethan blinked in confusion. He wasn't in his apartment anymore. He stood on the edge of a vast city, overlooking a landscape unlike anything he had ever seen. The sky was a strange hue of purple, streaked with neon pinks and blues, while towering crystal spires stretched high into the clouds. Floating islands hovered in the air, tethered to the ground by glowing energy streams. The atmosphere was alive with a buzzing energy that seemed to hum in the very air he breathed. This is Xylara," he whispered, barely able to process the scene unfolding before him. He had read about it, this magnificent world of the Xylarian Empire, but nothing could have prepared him for the reality of it. The sheer scale of the city, the beauty of the floating islands, and the unfamiliar alien sounds that filled the air were overwhelming. Before he could take it all in, a group of guards in sleek, shimmering armor approached him. Their eyes were cold, their expressions unreadable. They didn't speak, but their presence was imposing, and Ethan felt the weight of their gazes as they motioned for him to follow. With no choice but to comply, Ethan walked beside them, his mind still reeling from the sudden transportation. The path they led him down wound through the heart of the city, a bustling market square filled with strange creatures and colorful alien stalls. Creatures of all shapes and sizes passed by, some humanoid, others completely foreign, with limbs and features that seemed impossible to categorize. Their conversations, too, were in languages Ethan couldn't understand, but there was an energy in the air that spoke to him. This was a place where worlds collided, where different species lived and thrived together. The guards led him to a massive palace made entirely of gleaming, translucent crystal. It was unlike anything he had ever seen, both majestic and intimidating. The structure seemed to pulse with a life of its own, as if the palace itself was alive. They stopped at the enormous gates, and with a silent command, the doors opened. Inside the palace was even more breathtaking. The walls shimmered with soft, glowing light, and the floors were made of smooth, iridescent stone that reflected the lights from above. Massive columns stretched up into the sky, disappearing into the dark expanse. At the end of the grand hall, on a raised platform, sat Princess Xarnix. She was a vision of otherworldly beauty. Her regal posture and calm demeanor commanded attention. Her hair flowed like liquid silver, and her eyes were a deep violet, filled with a quiet intensity. Her gaze met Ethan's, and for a moment he felt a shiver run down his spine. "You have arrived, human," she said, her voice both soft and powerful, as if each word carried the weight of 1,000 meanings. "You are brave to come here, but you must understand the path you have chosen is not easy. The champion you will fight is like none you have ever fought." Ethan nodded, determined to prove himself. "I understand. I'm ready for whatever comes next." Princess Xarnex's eyes softened for a moment, as though she was studying him, weighing his words. She said, "You may be ready, but will you survive? That is the true question." Her words hung in the air, a challenge that Ethan couldn't ignore. He had always been confident in his abilities, but here, on this alien world, facing an alien champion, everything was uncertain. He didn't know if his strength, his skills, or his determination would be enough, but he wasn't going to turn back now. As if sensing his resolve, the princess raised her hand and a holographic image appeared before them, a 3D projection of the Xylarian champion, Xaurex. He was an imposing figure, easily twice Ethan's size, with armor that looked nearly impenetrable. His eyes glowed with an unsettling red hue, and his stance was powerful and menacing. The projection flickered and shifted, showing glimpses of Xaurex's many victories, his brutal strength, his unmatched combat skills. It was clear that defeating him would not be easy. "You will fight him in the arena of trials," Xarnex continued. "Prepare yourself. Once you enter, there is no turning back. The projection of Zalrex disappeared, and the hall returned to its serene quiet. Ethan felt a sense of finality in the air. This was it, the moment he had waited for, the moment that would define his future. He turned to face the princess. "When do I fight him?" Zarnax's gaze softened, almost imperceptibly. She replied, "Soon. But first, you must rest. Tomorrow, the trials begin." As the guards led him to his quarters, Ethan couldn't help but wonder what tomorrow would bring. The journey to this point had been filled with uncertainty, but now, standing on this alien world, he felt the weight of his decision fully settle on his shoulders. He had accepted the challenge, and now he would have to face the greatest fight of his life.
The battle begins. The morning sun rose over Xylara, casting a strange golden hue across the alien landscape. Ethan stood by the window of his quarters, staring out at the sprawling city below. It was hard to believe that just a few days ago, his mind raced as he tried to calm his nerves. The message from Princess Zarnix echoed in his mind. Once you enter, there is no turning back. The weight of those words pressed on him, but there was no room for fear now. He had made the choice, and now it was time to see it through. He was led to the arena of trials by the same silent guards who had brought him here. The air was thick with tension, and the streets were quieter than usual. It felt as though the entire city had come to a halt, watching, waiting for the fight to begin. As they entered the arena, Ethan's breath caught in his throat. The arena was massive, a giant circular pit surrounded by towering stands filled with a variety of alien species, all watching with anticipation. The ground beneath his feet was made of smooth, dark stone, and the sky above was painted with a strange swirling pattern of colors, almost like the sky was alive. At the center of the arena stood Zarlax, the Xylarian champion. His massive frame loomed over Ethan, and the ground seemed to shake with each step he took. His armor was gleaming, a dark, metallic material that seemed to absorb the light around it. His eyes glowed with a menacing red hue, and his expression was cold, unreadable. Ethan felt a shiver run down his spine, but he forced himself to stay calm. This was what he had come for. This was the challenge that could define him, make him more than just another fighter. "You are about to face your greatest test, human," a voice boomed from above. Princess Zarnix's image appeared on a large holographic screen overhead, her face serious. "This arena will test not only your strength, but your mind. Use everything you have, for your survival depends on it." With that, the ground beneath Ethan's feet began to rumble. A loud, piercing noise filled the air as the arena's structure shifted, and a large gate on the opposite side opened. From it, a variety of weapons emerged, each more dangerous than the last. Blades, spears, energy swords, and even strange alien devices all seemed to float toward the center of the arena. Ethan's eyes darted between them, trying to decide which weapon would give him the best chance against the mighty Zarlax. He had fought with many weapons before, but none like these. The weapons looked advanced, far beyond anything Earth could produce. The Xylarian champion seemed unfazed, standing tall and waiting for Ethan to make his move. But Ethan knew he couldn't hesitate. He picked up a sleek, silver sword that seemed to hum with energy as he held it. It was light, yet it felt incredibly powerful in his hands. He knew it would be a challenge to wield against someone like Zarlax, but it was the best chance he had. As the bell rang, signaling the start of the battle, the crowd roared in excitement. Zarlax charged forward with incredible speed, his massive sword raised high. Ethan barely had time to react, stepping back just in time to avoid a lethal strike. The force of the blow sent a shockwave through the arena, and Ethan's feet nearly slipped on the smooth stone floor.
Zarlak swung again, his blade cutting through the air like a storm. But Ethan was faster. He parried the attack, his sword clashing against Zarlax's with a loud metallic ring. The force of the blow sent vibrations up his arms, but he held firm, refusing to let the champion overpower him so easily. The fight continued with incredible speed. Ethan dodged and weaved, using the agility he had perfected over the years. But Zarlax was relentless, each strike stronger than the last. Ethan could feel his strength beginning to wane. His muscles ached, and his breath came in heavy gasps. He had underestimated how much strength it would take to stand up to such a powerful opponent. The crowd's cheers were deafening, but in the chaos of the fight, Ethan barely heard them. All he could focus on was Zarlax, the way his eyes burned with hatred, the way his every move seemed calculated to destroy. Ethan knew that this fight wasn't just about winning, it was about survival. As the battle wore on, Ethan began to notice something strange. With every strike, Zarlax seemed to be holding back. His movements were powerful, but they lacked the full intensity of a warrior who truly wanted to end the fight. Ethan's heart raced as a realization began to dawn on him. Zarlax was testing him. The champion wanted to see how far Ethan could push himself, how much pain he could endure before he broke. It was a game to him, and the stakes were more than just pride. They were life and death. A surge of determination filled Ethan as he tightened his grip on the sword. He couldn't afford to fail now. With a sudden burst of speed, he closed the gap between himself and Zarlax. He feigned a move to the left, and when Zarlax followed, he pivoted and struck, landing a blow across the champion's chest. The crowd gasped as Zarlax staggered back, his armor damaged for the first time in the fight. But instead of anger, there was something else in his eyes. Respect. Zarlax had underestimated the human, but that would be his mistake. The fight was far from over, but Ethan knew one thing now. He had earned the champion's attention, and that meant the real battle was just beginning.
The unexpected twist. Ethan's heart hammered in his chest as the sounds of the battle echoed through the arena. His blade was slick with the sweat of his exertion, and every muscle in his body screamed in protest, yet he refused to stop. He had landed a hit on Zarlax, something that no one, human or alien, had managed to do before. That small victory fueled his resolve. But the champion wasn't finished. Far from it. Zarlax's red eyes flickered with a new intensity as he steadied himself, his breathing heavy but controlled. For a moment, the arena fell into a strange silence. The Xyloran champion studied Ethan, his gaze sharp, calculating. He seemed to be considering something, as if debating how much longer he should allow this fight to continue. Then, without warning, Zarlax dropped his sword, and the ground beneath them trembled. The air thickened, charged with a raw, electrifying energy. The crowd's murmurs grew louder, a ripple of confusion and curiosity spreading through the stands. Ethan's eyes widened, sensing that something was about to change. Before he could react, the ground split beneath them, opening up like a mouth of the earth, revealing a swirling vortex of energy. It was like nothing Ethan had ever seen. Dark, pulsating, and full of raw power. The air around them vibrated with an unnatural hum, and for a moment, Ethan's vision blurred. He could feel the weight of the arena's ancient magic seeping into his skin, an unexplainable force that seemed to pull at his very soul. Zarlax stepped back, his expression now unreadable, as though he had prepared for this moment. "The true test begins now, human," he said, his voice low and filled with a sense of finality. Ethan didn't know what was happening,
but he could feel the danger creeping up around him. The vortex seemed to beckon him, pulling at his senses like an irresistible force. His instinct screamed at him to retreat, but his body refused to move. It was as though the arena itself had come alive, and it wanted him to fight. The vortex expanded, and from it emerged a new opponent, a figure clad in black, with a helmet that obscured their face. The being was smaller than Zalrex, but moved with a fluid grace that suggested an entirely different form of combat. They raised a hand, and a blade of pure energy materialized out of thin air, glowing with an eerie blue light. The crowd went silent. This was not part of the original challenge. Ethan's eyes darted between Zalrex and the new figure. Was this another champion, sent to ensure his defeat? Had Zalrex not been enough? "Who is this?" Ethan demanded, his voice hoarse but defiant. Zalrex's eyes narrowed, but his lips twisted into a small, almost knowing smile. "This is the true trial, human. You face not just my strength, but the arena itself. The Guardian of Xylara. Only the worthy survive." Ethan's heart sank. The Guardian of Xylara. This was no ordinary fighter. This was a being created from the very power of the arena, a force that had stood the test of time, guarding the Empire against any who sought to conquer it. Legends told of the Guardians, warriors who were neither alive nor dead, but part of the arena's ancient magic, bound to its will. Ethan's mind raced. The battle had just escalated to an entirely new level. He wasn't just fighting to win the princess's heart anymore. He was fighting for his life against a force that had been around for centuries, maybe longer. The Guardian moved first, faster than Ethan could follow. Their blades slashed through the air with a whistle, cutting through the stone floor beneath them with ease. Ethan barely had time to react, ducking and rolling out of the way. The Guardian's strikes were like lightning, each one precise and deadly. He could feel the difference between Zalrex's power and this new opponent's speed. The Guardian was relentless, pressing forward with such speed that Ethan could hardly catch his breath. He barely blocked a strike that would have severed his arm, and he realized that his agility wasn't enough to keep up with this new enemy. He had to outthink this new enemy. There was no way brute force alone would win this fight. But just as quickly as the Guardian had appeared, they paused. A strange humming noise filled the air, and the energy blade flickered. Ethan's breath caught in his throat as he saw the Guardian's movements slow for just a moment. Was this his chance? Without thinking, Ethan seized the opportunity. He lunged forward, using every ounce of strength and skill he had. His sword collided with the Guardian's energy blade, sending a burst of sparks flying. With a quick twist, Ethan disarmed the Guardian, knocking the blade from their hands. The Guardian staggered back, momentarily off balance. For a split second, time seemed to freeze. Ethan stood before the Guardian, his sword raised, poised to strike. His heart pounded in his chest. He knew that this was the moment he could end the fight here, prove himself, and win. But as he looked down at the Guardian's face, hidden beneath the helmet, something shifted within him. The Guardian's eyes glowed faintly from behind the helmet. Ethan saw no malice, but only fear. For the first time, the fight felt wrong. This wasn't an opponent seeking to defeat him. This was a being caught in the same ancient forces that had brought him here. He realized that the true trial wasn't about defeating another fighter. It was about surviving the arena itself. The Guardian didn't resist as Ethan lowered his sword. Slowly, they knelt on one knee, and a voice, deep, mechanical, yet filled with something almost human, whispered, "The arena chooses. The worthy will pass." Suddenly, the vortex in the arena began to spin wildly, its energy destabilizing. The ground trembled beneath their feet, and the force of the arena's energy surged outward in a violent shockwave. Zalrex raised his hands to shield his eyes, but the force was too much. Ethan staggered back, gripping the ground to steady himself. And then, as quickly as it had all started, the energy settled. The vortex dissipated into the air, leaving nothing but an eerie calm. The Guardian vanished, leaving no trace, while Zelrax stood in silence, his face unreadable. Ethan was left standing in the middle of the arena, panting, his sword still clenched tightly in his hands. He didn't know what had just happened, but he had survived the first true test of the Xyloran trial. "Congratulations, human," Zalrex said, his voice surprisingly soft. "You have passed the test, but your real challenge is just beginning." Ethan looked up, his eyes meeting the champion's. He had no idea what lay ahead, but one thing was certain: the battle for Princess Zarnix's heart was far from over.
The final showdown. The calm after the storm was unnerving. The energy of the arena, once alive with chaotic power, now felt hollow, as though it were waiting for something more to unfold. Ethan stood amidst the wreckage of the battle, sweat dripping from his brow, his chest rising and falling with each deep breath. His body ached, and his mind raced as he processed everything that had just happened. The Guardian, the unexpected twist. It was clear now that this challenge was more than just a fight. It was a trial of something much deeper, something ancient. Zalrex, his towering figure still standing in the center of the arena, broke the silence. "The trials are never simple," he said, his voice low but filled with a strange respect. "You have earned your place here, human, but the true test remains." Ethan's eyes narrowed. He had just faced the Guardian of Xylara, an ancient being whose very existence had been tied to the arena itself. Yet it was clear from Zalrex's words that something even greater awaited him. "What does that mean?" Ethan asked, his voice hoarse from exhaustion. He could barely believe he had made it this far, yet the unease gnawing at his gut told him that the real challenge was still to come. Zalrex's lips twisted into something that resembled a smile, though it was hard to say if it was one of respect or something darker. He said, "The fight you face is not just for the princess's heart, it is for the future of Xylara. The arena does not only test strength, it tests worthiness, and only the truly worthy can survive." Ethan's pulse quickened. He had heard rumors of the ancient power of the Xylarian Empire, of the legendary trials that tested not only physical strength, but the soul itself. But he thought that was just myth, until now. He glanced around the arena, his mind racing. "What do I have to do to pass?" he asked, his voice steady, though he felt far from it. Zalrex didn't answer immediately. Instead, he raised his hand, and the arena began to shift once more. The smooth stone floor cracked and rose in jagged patterns, as if the arena itself were being reborn. The walls of the arena began to glow with an eerie, otherworldly light, casting long shadows across the ground. The sky above rippled, dark clouds forming as a storm seemed to brew. A deep, thunderous voice suddenly echoed across the arena, a sound that seemed to come from every direction, reverberating through Ethan's bones. "The final test has arrived, human. Only those who can face the darkness within can claim victory. Will you be the one? Ethan's heart pounded as the voice faded. A heavy weight settled over him, as though the very air had thickened with a new, oppressive energy. The arena shifted once more, and a new figure appeared, a silhouette emerging from the darkened shadows at the far end of the arena. The figure was tall, almost impossible to make out, but the outline was unmistakable. An enormous, hulking creature, covered in armor that seemed to pulse with dark energy. Ethan took a step back, his sword still gripped tightly in his hands. "What is this?" he demanded, his voice steady despite the fear crawling up his spine. Zalrek stood silent, his eyes hard and unreadable as he watched the figure advance. "This," he said quietly, "is the true test." The creature stepped into the light, revealing a towering figure made entirely of shadow and dark energy. A warrior whose very presence seemed to warp the space around him. Its eyes were nothing but glowing red embers, and its form seemed to flicker like a shadow caught in a storm. The creature's massive hands clenched around an enormous weapon, a blackened sword that seemed to hum with a power that felt ancient and malevolent. "This is not a fight of strength," Zalrek said grimly. "This is a fight of will. The arena has summoned your greatest fear. Face it, and you may survive. Fail, and you will be consumed by it." Ethan's stomach twisted. He could feel the energy of the arena pulling at him, and suddenly the battlefield seemed much smaller. The dark creature, this fear-made flesh, was more than just an opponent. It was a manifestation of the doubt, the fear, and the uncertainty that had plagued him since the moment he had accepted Princess Zarnix's challenge. His mind flashed back to the messages from the princess, the coldness in her words. "Defeat my champion, and you'll be mine." But what had he truly been fighting for? Had he been chasing a dream, or had he simply been too stubborn to admit he wasn't ready for this? What if he wasn't worthy of the princess's heart? What if he wasn't worthy of any of it? The creature in front of him raised its weapon, and the air seemed to darken with its presence. "Face me, human," it hissed, its voice like the scraping of metal on stone. "Face the darkness within you and prove you are worthy of survival." Ethan's pulse quickened as the creature moved forward, its massive blade swinging down with terrifying speed. He raised his sword, blocking the blow just in time, but the force of the strike sent him stumbling back. The creature was stronger than anything he had ever fought, and yet it was not just strength that was needed. It was resolve. His doubts, his fears, were beginning to cloud his mind, but Ethan knew that he couldn't let them win. He had to push through. If he didn't, he would lose not just the fight, but everything he had fought for. With a deep breath, Ethan steeled himself. The creature's sword came down again, but this time he was ready. With a swift move, he dodged to the side, bringing his sword up in a calculated strike. But as his blade connected with the creature, it passed right through it, the creature vanishing into smoke before reappearing at the opposite end of the arena. The shadowy warrior's laughter echoed, deep and mocking. "You cannot defeat me with mere strength. You must defeat your own fear, human. Only then will you win." Ethan stood tall, his mind clearing. He knew what he had to do. The true battle wasn't against the creature. It was against himself. He had spent his entire life fighting for others' approval, for the idea of victory, but now he had to fight for something more important: his belief in himself. With newfound clarity, he lowered his sword, not in defeat, but in acceptance. He closed his eyes for a moment, taking in the energy of the arena, the fear, the pressure, all of it. And then, he focused on one thing: his strength, not just as a fighter, but as a person. The creature lunged forward again, but this time Ethan didn't flinch. He stepped forward, meeting it head-on, his heart steady. He wouldn't let fear control him anymore. With one decisive strike, Ethan shattered the illusion, the darkness dissipating as the creature faded into nothing.
The arena fell silent, the tension in the air dissipating. Ethan stood alone, breathless, but unbroken. He had faced his greatest fear and conquered it. From the stands, Princess Zarnix's voice echoed across the arena. Softer now, filled with something approaching admiration. "You have passed, human. You are worthy." The crowd erupted into cheers, but Ethan barely heard them. He had won, but more importantly, he had discovered the truth about himself. The battle for the princess's heart might have ended, but this was just the beginning of a new journey, one where he would define his own path.